Creatures that stalk you, monsters whose forms defy your nightmares, mythical beasts far worse than any legend. Today I've got 5 allegedly true stories of people who have seen mysterious creatures after dark, which, in my opinion, is probably the worst time to see a nightmare creature of any kind. But hey, at least these folks are some of the unlucky few who actually saw these beasts. Most don't live long enough to catch a glimpse. If you have a scary story and you want it narrated, I'm looking for scary night shift stories. Send those over to us, or any scary story you have, at darkstories.org. And hey, if you enjoy these videos I do, you should haunt that like button by destroying it. Now, let's begin. Skinwalker Pack, from Nellie. This story happened to my older sister's boyfriend. His name is Emmett. Emmett is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and just returned from his mission after serving 4 months in Farmington, New Mexico. But he spent most of his days in Arizona. For a young man who wants to serve a mission, he has to serve for 2 years before they can return home. But Emmett came home after 4 months. Now, over in other religious parts of the United States, he couldn't explain this story while he was out in the field. But now that he was back in Utah, which is where we live, he was able to share it with me when he was visiting family. Since my memory is not so great, I'll explain this story to the best of my ability. Emmett was in Farmington, New Mexico, and was staying in a trailer surrounded by desert, playing games with his companion and 2 other missionaries. They weren't staying in the middle of nowhere, if you were wondering. Anyway, they were laughing and having a good time when they suddenly had a bad feeling come over them. It wasn't anything expected. It just washed over them like a tidal wave all at once. Then one of the missionaries spoke. "They're here." Emmett was confused, but that dark presence he felt that night was too strong to ignore. So with some sort of natural instinct, they grabbed items to use as weapons before opening up the back door. Emmett had chosen a baseball bat, and he wasn't as scared. But when they stepped outside into the wild desert, all 4 missionaries were met by 4 dogs, standing side by side in a neat row. Emmett described them as bigger than any dogs or wolves or coyotes he's seen. But he knew they weren't dogs. The animals' eyes glowed yellow, and their teeth were sharp. It seemed like they could tear through anything, even some 19-year-old guys. What stood out to him the most was that one of them was the biggest out of all 3, and was hunched over like it was about to pounce. They didn't have tails either, but what made this terrifying to me was when Emmett described how unnatural their eyes looked. Not dog eyes, more human-like. As intimidating as these dogs looked, Emmett's companion was stern and directive as he gave out a warning, saying, "Go, now. You have no power here." These creatures didn't like that. They let out a low growl in response, but 3 of them reluctantly turned and ran away, but the biggest one did not. It crouched lower, as if it was preparing to strike. "This is your last chance. Leave, now," Emmett's companion warned. The creature didn't listen, so the authoritative missionary raised his hand in the air and began to say, "By the power of God, I cast out any evil spirits that walk among this area. I strip away your power." After speaking that powerful prayer, the thing began whimpering like an actual dog, as if it was injured. It let out a screech like no creature should in this world, and began to walk away. However, it fell down like it was hurt, then got up again, only to fall once more, but this time it stood up, Its paws were replaced with hands. Human hands. The man-beast fell again, and the next time it got up, it, or he, stood up on 2 legs. The creature was a man, and the only thing he was wearing was a wolf's skin. This vile man knew he was powerless. He didn't go back. He just ran away, dropping the wolf's skin in the dirt. Emmett and his companions stayed in their trailer the rest of the night and did not come out until morning. They went to go check out the wolf's skin that was left behind, and it smelled horrible, like it had been dead for a very long time. It was dirty, rotten, and obviously full of evil. They did not touch or pick it up, because, like they said, they feared there was some sort of evil in it. They told their bishop everything, but that was pretty much it. Nothing else like that happened to them, or to Emmett, for the rest of the mission. I've heard of people possessing that kind of power to transform themselves into animals. Skinwalkers, they're called. But I just can't believe this stuff can be real. I'm a true believer of God, and I'll do anything to keep whatever sinister things lurk out there away from me and my family. Over in Ballard, Utah, there's a place called Skinwalker Ranch, where it's known for UFO sightings and, of course, skinwalkers. I bring that up because it's frightening to know that these things, if they do exist, might just live in my state, and may even walk among the place where Emmett lives, where I live, just waiting to bring harm upon those who least expect it. I believe the devil's power is strong in this world, and it makes me terrified that people who are sick in the head would do anything to carry this type of dark magic. Cryptid Stalker from Crayana. I want to start off by saying that this story is from a female's perspective. With that being said, I guess I'll start with the beginning of my day. My alarm clock went off, jarring me from a dreamless sleep. I grumbled and rubbed my face. It was 2:45 a.m., and I already hated myself for accepting a super early shift. My daily rush of getting ready for work included a quick pat for my cat, coffee, a hot shower, and more coffee. Clumsily, I walked out of my house and to my car. The air was cold and crisp. I shrugged deeper into my sweater and ran for my car. After bobbing to some bad rap songs, I was feeling more awake, and before too long I was pulling into the parking lot at work. At this point, I wish I would have stayed home. I missed my bed and was definitely not a morning person. But I have a conscience and knew if I backed down, someone would have to cover this extra long shift. Pulling my keys from the ignition, I sighed, letting my eyes glance up and out the windshield. That's when I first noticed something was weird. Glancing at the clock, it was now 3:40 a.m., and I was due to punch in 20 minutes. I had a few minutes to play detective. Hopping out of my car, I slowly and quietly shut my door. It was still dark outside. My work had a creepy alley right next to the parking lot, and from the alley I heard a scuffling sound, like footsteps and garbage being tossed through. As I live in the city, I figured it was a homeless person. I grabbed an extra granola bar from my purse and walked toward the noise. I could see in front of me due to the streetlights. However, when I looked to where the noise was generating from, all I saw was a big green dumpster and a black mass. Was it a shadow? No, it was definitely moving on its own. My heart slowed, and my fight or flight took a hold of me. I didn't understand what I was seeing. My brain couldn't make sense of it. I turned on my heel, heading towards my work building, or hell, even at this point, back to my car. Was it Smelling for me? I literally made no noise as I turned. How did it hear me? Half turned towards my car and half still pointing towards this thing. I saw ears atop its head. They perked up and twitched. The coldest chill ran through my body. My hand let go of the extra granola bar that I was holding on to. The unknown beast growled and started to slowly hunker down, hidden by the dumpster. All I could see was dark hair sticking up. That was all I needed to see. I ran down the alley past my car and into my work building, where I slammed the door. I didn't feel safe, though. I work alone, especially this early in the morning. Nobody was here and the doors were made of glass. I stepped towards the doors, knowing I needed a code to open it, and I looked out. I saw nothing. My heart was still trying to beat out of my chest, my breath fogging up the glass as I peered out. Something growled. Goosebumps instantly rose on my skin. Who was calling my name?
Let me in. I'm cold.
The voice whined. I'm not stupid. I didn't know exactly what was going on, but I was not about to open the door for anyone. I put my head down and fast-walked to my office. I shut the door and swiped closed the blinds. My office is situated on the first floor with big bay windows overlooking the street that was usually packed with cars, but now it was empty. I logged onto my computer and it slowly started up. With it, I informed my boss I was there and clocked in. Great, 5 minutes early. My breathing slowed at this point. I wasn't feeling normal, but I was feeling better. Trying to forget the incident, I dived into my work. 45 minutes passed, no voices, just the fan blowing softly from behind me. I heard from the window. My heartbeat slowed even more. A small whistle escaped my lips as I blew out hot air. I couldn't believe my ears. Were those nails tapping against the glass? I very slowly got up from my chair and walked over to the window. My hand grasped the window blind, and for some reason, I had crouched down, trying to make myself look smaller. I used one finger to pull up and peek out of the side of the blinds. Much to my satisfaction, nothing was there. At that time, I figured if I didn't see anything, maybe I was still kind of tired. Maybe I imagined hearing the tapping noise. Making my way back to my seat, I sat down, brushing more sleep crusties out of my eyes and looking at my work again. I needed to get these files filled out if I ever had a dream of getting my weekend off. So on I went, passing roughly another 20 minutes without a noise. And then a whop sound made me fly out of my chair. Again, it was coming from the window. It sounded like a solid thud, like something heavy was hurled at it. My God, was someone trying to break in? Were they trying to break through the windows? Most people would respond to this with fear. People that don't believe in the paranormal would pass it off as something logical. But me, I got mad. I was angry and sleep-deprived. So what does one do when this happens? I stormed to the window and snatched the blinds up, letting out a loud breath of air through my nose. There it was again, looking at me, and I could see it clearly now. The dark brown hair, the muscled body. It looked like an oversized dog. However, it stood on its back legs. I knew then I had made a mistake. I knew I was in over my head. My breath caught in my throat as this thing eyed me up and down, drool hanging from its oversized teeth. My granola bar from earlier was clenched in its oversized paw. I shut the blinds so quickly it left tiny rope burns on my hand. I didn't care about work. I didn't care about anything. I crawled under my desk, pulling my knees to my chest, and cried. I don't know how long I sat there for. Hours? Minutes? No noise ever came from the window again. Gradually, the sky lightened up. Once I noticed this, I crawled out from my hiding spot. Still, no one was there. It was just barely 6 a.m. at the time. I figured the earliest I would see anyone was at 8 a.m. That was usually when I got to work. Now, I'm a smoker. Call me what you will. Call it wasteful, whatever word suits you best. But I stepped out the front door for a quick nicotine fix. I peered left, and then I peered right. Nothing but empty roads and an empty parking lot minus my car. I gave myself a couple of minutes to stop shaking. I inhaled my cigarette desperately. That's when the noise came again, a low growling sound. I looked up, cigarette already out of my hand, and my other was on the door. I saw the beast for the last time, standing on top of the dumpster on the other side of the road. He, or it, was looking at me, peering down, and then he raised his paw and flung. There was a sickening sting in my leg. I looked down, ready to drop down to the ground, but my adrenaline had kicked in again. There lay the granola bar, now smashed to pieces, and the package was ripped open, lying limply at my feet. I rubbed my leg where the granola bar hit me. I looked up, knowing I had bigger things to fear, but yet it was gone. The city had awakened. By the time I got back into my office and looked out the window, there were cars trickling up and down the roads. The sun was coming up, and the darkness fled. I stood there looking out. Across the grass, over the roads, even to the buildings across the street, I took it in with new eyes. I would never forget this day, especially because I could see long, thin scratches etched in the glass. If that beast wanted to get in and devour me whole, it could have. And that's enough to not make me feel safe anymore. The Beast of Lauri Ann Forest, from Lupex Cinema. Back in my senior year of high school, I was a part of my school's SCA, which is a student organization where students at the school come up with fun things to do at the school. I planned to do a field trip to Lauri Ann Forest Campground for spring break. I've never gone camping before, so I thought that it would be the perfect thing to do. After getting it all planned out, I gave it to Mr. Thornberry, who was in charge of SCA at the time. He was all down for it. We got it promoted in the school, and to my surprise, it was a massive success. A total of 200 students had signed up for the trip. Typically, not a lot of students would even consider something like this, and it would get cancelled as a result. When it was time to get ready for the trip, I packed up the things that I needed, like a flashlight and some camping gear and a change of clothes. The next school day, everyone who was going on the trip went to one of the 5 buses that were needed for it, and we went over to the actual forest. Once we arrived, we got our things and went into our assigned cabins. We unpacked, and then we met up with a camp counselor. He explained the rules. It was the usual don't do this and don't do that, and he even explained the history of the forest, back when it was controlled by the Cayuga tribe. Then the camp counselor asked us if we liked scary stories, which pretty much everyone excitedly said yes. The counselor went on to explain the many monsters that the Cayuga tribe believed in, like the Wendigo and the Skinwalkers, and some other ones that I didn't know about at the time. I wasn't much of a folklore type of person. He did eventually mention a monster that we all recognized, the Wolfman, and as much as I wanted the whole monster thing to be done, some of the other kids wanted to hear the full story. I don't remember all the details to the story. It was about a man from the Cayuga tribe who disrespected one of the gods that the Cayuga people worshipped, and as a result, he was thrown out of the tribe, but met a shaman that turned him into a werewolf that supposedly still roams the forest that we were camping in. I laughed at the story once it was done. There's no way a werewolf could exist. They're fairy tales. I figured no religious person these days would believe it. The counselor stared at me and said,
"Well, I hope you don't meet one yourself."
But I continued to laugh. That night, after we all got done with our campfire and s'mores, we all chose to go back to the cabin so we could get ready for the canoeing we were going to do in the lake tomorrow. Some of the guys in the cabin had brought their 3DSs and other portable handhelds. I didn't bring any of mine because I wanted to enjoy the trip without any sort of technology. I went to my bed. It took some time to get it adjusted to how I like it. These beds were not very comfortable. About half an hour later, I woke up to a loud howl. Startled, I immediately got up, and some of the other guys got up as well. I looked around the room to find out what the noise was. "I think it came from outside," said Brandon. I got out of my bed and looked out the window. There, right behind a tree, was a 7-foot-tall figure that looked to be bulky and hairy. Whatever it was standing on 2 legs. It had a bend in its back, but somehow it resembled a canine. Then I heard Andrew make a loud noise when he accidentally knocked over a lantern. I turned to him for a moment and told him to be quiet, that there was something outside. I turned back around to see the thing now facing me, and my heart sank as I saw its bright yellow eyes and razor-sharp teeth. Looking at its eyes, I could sense a feeling of anger, and it began to growl, which caused my chest to vibrate. The word that came to my mind was werewolf. I never thought they'd be real, as I said before, but there was something just like one standing there, staring at me. Before this werewolf could do anything, the lights came on, and the creature, with an irritated look, turned over to the lights and looked back at me, before proceeding to run back into the woods. I slowly went back to my bed, and everyone asked me what I saw. I didn't think they would believe me if I said a werewolf, given what I'd said earlier that day. So I told them it was a bear. The following day, the canoes were ready, but then we came across some big scratch marks on the side of one of them. One of the girls asked what could have done that. I got shivers thinking about the thing from last night. While we were canoeing, I was with Brandon catching fish, talking about what we planned to do after graduation. But before we could finish, I smelled a bad odor. Everybody gagged because of it. We were going back to shore when we saw an elk that looked to have been torn into 1,000 pieces. The camp counselor told us to go back to the cabins so they could clean it up. On our way back to the cabin, I told Brandon and the others what I saw last night, and they were not skeptic, given the scratch marks we'd seen, and the many remnants of an elk. That night, in response to all the weirdness, we all barricaded the doors and moved furniture in front of them. We closed the blinds for good measure. One of us, though, Alfie, actually didn't know what was going on. So we told him that we'd heard rumors that the girls were up to something. We made it up so that he wouldn't get scared. We then went to sleep, but I did eventually hear the howl again. Everyone got up, but Alfie went over to ask me if we were telling the truth about the girls pranking us. I then told him the truth, that most of us believed that there was some sort of creature that shouldn't exist, lurking about the camp. But before I could finish, I heard loud scratching noises outside the cabin. Everyone was frozen in place for what felt like an eternity. The scratches stopped, and then we heard a roar, followed by the sound of geese in distress. Then there was the sound of pounding, and geese making a noise that would mean they were getting hurt. Eventually, we hear the terrifying sound of flesh being ripped from bone. After all that, there was a roar and the sounds of geese one last time. At 5 in the morning, we all got up and unbarricaded the cabin. We went to go see the damage. There were scratches on the cabin along with feathers, dead geese, as well as a chaotic amount of red splashed about. "Christ," said Alfie. Brandon said that we should get rid of the bodies, because we were going to be questioned by the teachers, and the dead geese were not going to help. We collected them up and threw them into the lake. When we all went back home, I began to read things about Lauri Forest. There were a lot of other sightings of werewolves there, so maybe going back isn't the best idea for anyone. California Grasshopper from Dumbsterlord. I live in Northern California, in the more country areas that have been ravaged by one of the multiple major fires. A while after we'd started to rebuild, we were eventually able to stay out on the property. Of course, many of the trees had burned out. There were some trees boxed in on 3 sides of the hills, and the only living trees being the ones in our backyard, which made this even more strange. Around 2 or 3 years after moving back to the property, I was outside one night. We had a fridge outside in a hay shed due to us living in a trailer. I was going to grab bread when I heard a loud thump followed by some twigs breaking. When I heard it, I looked for the source of the noise. That's when I saw it, a large humanoid thing. Its hind legs were bent much like a cricket or grasshopper, with 2 large clawed toes. The creature had long front arms which it used to prop up its large upper torso. It stared at me like a deer in headlights, with large black insect-like eyes. Its head was humanoid too, with a seemingly normal mouth. We stood there, neither of us moving a muscle, until it suddenly launched itself over our neighbor's fence, which is easily 6 feet tall, and it was sitting at least 7 feet away. I watched it hop away, covering massive distances in a very short period of time. After that, I grabbed the bread and hurried inside. I never told my family due to the pure bizarreness of it all. I've seen it a few times after, but I've no idea what it is. A user by the name of Insect Devil asks, "What color was it? Did it have a reflection in its eyes? Did it seem curious? Or did it seem like it messed up and made a noise it didn't mean to? You hear anything around the house after that? Oh, and if you can, go check to see if there are footprints in the daylight and take photos." Dumbsterlord replies, "It was a good while back. I checked the next morning though, and it did leave spots in the neighbor's field where it had jumped through. I didn't think to take photos at the time. Its eyes had a shine to them, by the way, and it had a tannish color to it. I've seen it a few times, and every time it seems to just be looking around, never showing signs of being hostile, but I never got closer than 10 feet from it. It never got too close to the house as far as I know." Insect Devil replies, "I like to think it may be some sort of fae-like creature or woodland spirit. Anything weird ever happen on the property?" Dumbsterlord answers, "No, nothing on this property, and I don't know, to be honest. I only ever heard of fae as malicious. I've also seen a skinwalker, but that story is a lot less interesting than it sounds." Insect Devil chimes back in, "From what I've read, what we may see as cruel is just fun for the fae folk. They have their own rules and such, but man, would I love to see something crazy like you did." And to finish it off, Dumbsterlord replies, "It sounds fun, until it's happening. Trust me." Skinwalker in India from Naman Rocks 208. I'm Indian from Mumbai. This all happened in January this year, as of writing this. I was on a trip to my village in Rajasthan, India. I'm 6'1" and around 100 kilograms. It happened 2 days after I made it to my village. Now, my home is mostly rural and has lots of woods on the east side. It was around January 15th. My girlfriend, Sejal, came with me as the two of us went on a nighttime walk. The village's activity had died down completely. We were walking near the woods and generally having a good time together. Suddenly, I hear my dad's voice of all things coming from the woods. At first, I thought I was hearing things, but then my girlfriend even asked, "Did you hear that?" I began to listen more carefully. We decided then that it might be best to end our nighttime adventure and just head back home. We were about 5 minutes of a walk away from the entrance of the woods, which led back to the main road, where there it would be a 20-minute walk back home. Suddenly, I hear,
"Son, I sprained my foot. Help me. Come here."
The thing is, I knew it wasn't my dad. He was at home in Mumbai, and the voice, it may have sounded like him, but it was distorted in a way, like a playback from some sort of device. Then it came again, the same voice. Then it came from my right side where my girlfriend was. At this point, she was in tears and I told her not to panic. But then, I freaking saw it. It was taller than me. It came out from the right side where I'd heard my father's voice. It was really big, about 8 feet tall, towering over me. I was panicking and did not know what to do. It looked like a deer, but with the body of a wolf, completely black and hairy. But its eyes were eerily human, with an orange color to them. Impossibly, it stood on 2 legs, and it was decaying pretty bad. It spoke again.
"Son, come here."
Without warning, it lunged at us. It was only about 15 feet away. My girlfriend yelled run, and we both began to run together, me a bit behind her. It was giving chase. We were soon at the main road. Now here's what bothers me. While we were running and shouting for help at the main road, I looked behind me and I could see it at the entrance of the woods. It appeared to be grinning at us, but for some reason it didn't follow any further. We made it back home safe. My girlfriend would be sick for 12 days after this, and during that time I told my uncle everything. He nodded and told me,
"Don't be afraid. That demon won't hurt you anymore. I'll call the pundit."
Which is a priest. The pundit also had seen that thing before, apparently. Said it attached itself to our village. However, it doesn't seem to attack the locals. It will try to harm outsiders, though. He blessed my uncle's home and cast a spell on me and my girlfriend, so that thing wouldn't bother us. My girlfriend refuses to talk about it, because she refuses to believe that what we saw was real, and my father and mother won't believe me. So it feels pretty good to at least be able to say it here. Thanks for listening. Well, that brings us to the end of this Darkness Prevails episode. If you enjoyed the show, haunt that like button by destroying it. Be sure to share the video with a friend or family member, and send us your stories so I can narrate them, specifically night shift stories. Just go to darkstories.org. Until next time, here are the credits to my patrons who continue to donate or have donated before. Remember, stay safe out there, and stay creepy, because this world is a strange one.